All right, Proffitt podcast listeners, we have a special guest on the show today. So welcome to the show, Sydnea. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes, I'm so excited to chat with you. We were just talking before we started recording. We have such a juicy topic today that everyone has experienced. But before I get there, tell us a little bit about you and all the different things that you do because the first thing we talked about is you're multi-hyphenate. Like you do so many things. So tell us all about them.
Yeah, so now when I introduce myself, I literally just say I do a lot, right? So I have lots of passions. So I am a brand designer and strategist. So I help clients get their visuals, through branding, websites, and marketing clarity. I am a yoga teacher, so moving constantly. And I'm also a professor teaching students how to improve graphic design as well as a business of entrepreneurship, business of design too.
Oh my gosh. And how long have you been doing all of these things? Are any of those like a newer thing or have you been doing them for a while?
I mean, at this point, so I started with the design and graphics. I started that in school, so I knew I didn't want to work for anyone. So that's been 12 years now, 12 years. Yoga, I've been teaching yoga for almost 9 years. And then I've been a professor for, this will be my full third year. So
Oh my
quite some time.
gosh. That's so awesome. Well, I love kind of setting the scene for everybody because we haven't really fully teased out. The topic is burnout today. So if you just heard all of that and you're like, oh, but I wonder because I picked up yoga about, let me see. I've been doing it on a very amateur, like got a DVD for home instruction
Yeah.
probably about a decade ago. And I would do it and be like, I'm a yoga master. Like, I mean, obviously, and I never took a class this was all just in the comfort of my home.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm amazing at this. And then I just stopped doing it for a while. And now I've incorporated it back into my lifestyle. And I will tell you, if anybody's listening, if you've never tried yoga and you're like, I want to do something that's active, I want to work out, it is the best thing for my mental health, like on top of running or any other kind of like really strenuous exercise. It is the thing I feel like that's been a game changer and my body craves it. Like if I go a week without doing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta do yoga again. So I'm so curious, how did that kind of come into your world and what made you want to not just practice yoga, but become a teacher?
Well, being a yoga teacher actually kind of fell into my lap. I usually say my whole journey has been kind of just like a let's go with it. So growing up, my mom had a gym, and so I would always like be in the gym, not by choice, but helping out.
Right, right.
And so when I came to college, I actually started as a Zumba teacher because my mom was like, "Hey, let's go get certified." And then as I was building my design business, I just had a lot of free time too. So I had a friend who was just once, "Hey, can you teach a yoga class for me? Kids class." I'd never taught a class before, outside
Uh-huh.
of like yoga or not outside of Zumba. And she's like, "Yeah, it's just like an adults class." I'm like, "I never taught that either." But so I just went and it was so hard, but it was so good.
Yeah.
Just hearing the children laugh and like not listen to me. And I'm like, this is amazing. And she was like, "Well, if you go get certified in children's, I'll give you the contract." And then one contract led to a next. And then eventually, because I was teaching in schools, I was able to get my full 200 hour for free. So I went and got that. Then I started teaching adults. And over the course of the 9 years, I just like wanted to learn more. I started getting trainings every year and I was teaching everywhere. And so it was just, like I said, it kind of fell into my lap. And it was like one of the best decisions because it like added that mindfulness piece, checking out my body to be able to see like what's going on, and just like thinking about what I'm doing differently, and just letting go of my ego.
Mm.
Really, that was a big piece.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, and I can only imagine because when, everybody that's listening, they're either a creator, they want to be a creator, or they have an online business and they're trying to figure out, well, how does this whole creator economy, content marketing, how does that play into it? And within that, there are a lot of egos. Let me just tell
Yeah.
you, there are some big egos out there. So I love that you mentioned like, For me, yoga is so grounding. And I love that we have this like commonality because it's not something I talk about publicly a lot too. And whenever I saw that, that's one of your specialties and one of the things that you do, I was like, oh, we need to have a chat because I mean, if that's the only thing you get out of today's episode is you need to add some yoga in your life, I feel like we've done our job. Like we've
Yeah.
done a really good job.
It's so important. Like, I think even when you're talking about burnout, like, I think had I not been a yoga teacher, right, and really understanding and studying the concepts and like the mindfulness aspect, I think where I'm at today would probably look a little bit different, if not a lot, right? To be able to be mindful of all the things that I do in a way that, like, okay, is this supporting me? Do I need to take a break? Do I need to step back? Am I experiencing something in my body that does not feel good? Is it time for rest? And I think for me, as I teach my students, we have to listen to our body at all times. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not at 100% or if I'm not mindful, then I can't be that to other people in whatever capacity that is.
Yeah. I mean, can you share? I mean, we talked about this earlier that my audience, they love personal stories or they love stories of, just realness because we're sitting here. Yes, we have both accomplished some incredible things in our journeys, but at the end of the day, like we're human and we all experience burnout to varying degrees. So I'm just curious if you have any examples of in your journey, maybe even early in your journey, because there's some people that are just starting out and they're overwhelmed with all the things that they could do to run their online business or create a podcast or start something. And they're just really feeling that. So do you have like a special message for them or a story that you could share?
Yeah. So when I first started, I came 12 years ago, looks a little different than what it looks like now in terms of being a graphic designer and going to do the work, right? It was a lot of hustle, 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 like go, you don't sleep, like you just, you just worked and tried to find many clients as possible. And in that mind space, for me, I started getting sick. A cold would last a little bit longer or a cough would be a little bit longer. And until I had to realize like what is going on in my body, and it's even before yoga, right? I'm like, what's happening right now that I cannot be functional enough to do my work? Is this hustling that I'm trying to do, is it really healthy for me? So I had to kind of like take a step back and like, how can I still thrive in my business, but still put myself first? And the funny part is that once I realized like once I realized like, okay, my burnout looks like sickness, I learned how to, because I still hadn't really clicked that hustle mindset yet. I learned how to navigate around that, right? And so then what happens though is, okay, your body's like, hey, well, sick doesn't work anymore. What do you need to do now? So eventually it came to just me being tired all the time. I would go to sleep and work wouldn't get done. I just physically could not do it. So even like today, like these days, my body can still recognize it. 2 weeks ago, actually, 2 weeks ago, I had been working every day. I was supposed to take a Saturday off and just like, hey, pause, take the break. But I didn't. So Sunday morning, I got up, I taught a yoga class, and I came back and I was like, I want to do just a little bit of work. I was so tired. I got in bed for an hour. I slept the whole day. And what's the interesting part was that every time I got up to like use the bathroom, my body felt so heavy, Yeah. And that mindset that I had previously, like in that hustle mindset, would really beat myself up over, oh my God, you're not working, you need to work. Like, yeah, it's Sunday, but so where I remember at one point I was told like McDonald's is open every day. You need to be open every day as well. No. So now these days, like that 2 weeks ago, it was just like giving yourself the grace. You need to take the break. You've been working, you were traveling, you've been working. It's okay to just pause and like enjoy the pause, and coming off of that, like that took that Sunday off the next week was great, but I think for me, like I said, really putting away that ego and recognizing it first. Because sometimes it's hard to recognize, like, well, someone else is doing, a little bit
Yeah.
more, someone else is doing, working, but I'm not someone else. We don't know their story. All I know is right now, my body needs this because if not, it will shut down drastically, you know?
Yeah. And I think that our bodies have that muscle memory, like you were saying, is like we can recognize it a lot faster. It's not this like, maybe I have this, or maybe I just have allergies or something. It's like, oh, no, no, no. This is familiar now. Like we've been
Yeah.
playing this game long enough that we can kind of see it coming. And you have a decision point where it's like, okay, are you going to rest or are you going to keep pushing? And I'm thinking about the people that are listening right now that are saying, because I've heard this time and time again, they're like, well, I have to keep creating content. I have to put things out on Instagram every single day. I have to, put out a podcast episode every week or a YouTube video, or I need to get that blog post out. And what's really tricky about, content creation in general, and I'd love for you to speak to this, is it never ends. Right? Like there's no end date. Like you don't start a podcast to say, well, unless it's a limited podcast, right? Unless it's just 10 episodes and then you're going to take a break and it's seasonal. But the majority of the people listening, they're creating and in their minds, it's not going to end. So
Yeah.
how do you really balance that need that that there's always something to do, right? There's always the next piece of content to create, or there's always the next thing. How
Mhm.
do you balance that with being actually productive and saying, no, I am going to take a break?
Yeah. So I think that that's kind of a two parts, right? Because we have the list of the always productive, or always things to do. And yeah, that list never ends and it is constantly growing. And one thing I talk to my students about, because I'll talk to them about like time management and whatnot. And the fact of the matter is that half of the things on our list, while it's constantly growing, do we really want to do them?
Mm.
Right? Because the likelihood of us really wanting to not wanting to do them is why it stays on a list so long. Something else pops up. I think for me, this year has really been a case of how honest can I be with myself?
Mm. Yeah.
Not necessarily for like other people, right? It's just like, what am I really telling myself? Like, what's that self unconscious part? And is it aligned with what I'm saying? And if it's not, why is that? And as far as tackling the list, like I'll write a list. Like right now, my list for yesterday had 6 items on it. One thing got done. And that's okay. The world did not burn, like I'm still here. My clients, nobody like broke their business, like, but what I've had to learn too is add space. I had a lot of space around what I need to do and give myself the time. There used to be a time when I would say, or talk to a client, hey, I get you this to you tonight, knowing I had 3 other things to do.
Mm.
And that was a case of me trying to please them, look good, that goes back to the ego. So now it's just, okay, well, you need this done? Maybe not today, but within 48 hours. Letting them know, like communicating to who needs to be communicated to, and just being honest about my time and what I can actually do. I find that it's easier to respect someone when they can, I guess, give you the time and actually follow through on that rather than give you a time and not follow through at all,
Yeah.
And then as far as content, I have not posted on my social page. The stories, I commit the stories in quite some time, right? And in the top of the year, or last year and going into the new year, I was like posting every day. I was in the challenge. So I wanted to like really start rebuilding it. I was miserable.
Mm.
Every day it's like, oh, I have to post now. What am I going to post today? And my coach was just like, do you enjoy this?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no. She was like, then why are you doing it? And at the time I told her, I was like, well, I want to build authority in what I'm talking about. And she's like, you're using social media to build authority?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, when you put it that way, you know,
Gotta love
you know,
coaches, right?
right. No, that conversation was everything. But what we discovered instead is like, well, I do like to talk to my stories as I'm talking to my friends, and we're just talking about the busyness of my life or what's going on behind the scenes, like as if it's a conversation, you know, and that's lighter for me in this moment than having to sit down and try and plan out a grid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I then have the space to do the grid or do the posts to be consistent at it, then that's another conversation. You know, so for me, again, it goes to what am I actually wanting to do that I can do for a little bit? Because yeah, once you start posting, you want to be consistent at it, like whatever your schedule's going to be. But you know, it's more than just posting. It's what's the quality of your post. You know, because at some point you can only get away with, you know, post to post for so long before it's like, hey, what are we really talking about?
Yeah. And I think that, well, first of all, I love the honesty here, because as soon as you said like, oh, you know, I had 6 things and I did one thing, I'm like, yes and yes. And I have found myself, I use Asana for all my time management, like project management stuff. There is 3 tasks right now off the top of my head that I can tell you that I have moved at least once a month, where I'm just like, nah, that's not going to happen this month. So I'll just throw it to the next month. I don't even look at what date it is. I'm just like, nope, it's not going to happen. And I know it's not going to happen for the next few weeks. I'll just throw it to the next month.
Yeah.
When in reality, it makes me see like, oh, maybe I don't need to do this. Like maybe I just don't need to do it at all, or need to push it out till next year. Maybe it's a project for the next quarter, or I need to have someone else do this for me that maybe actually enjoys doing it. Like this is a sign to myself. Like there's a reason why you're pushing it out. You don't enjoy it, or, you know, it's too time consuming, or you just confused. You don't know how to do it. And that's okay. Like, I think that being honest about it is like half the struggle. And I think about people that have burned out, like in the content space or the online marketing space or digital course space, that I've been following for a few years. And the one thing that is so common when they come back is boundaries. And I'm curious, do you have any experience with setting boundaries, or do you have any recommendations for someone that's like, oh yeah, I have no boundaries right now. People are calling me all the time, or they're texting me. I have clients that are like overstepping boundaries, or maybe family members, but do you have any experience with boundaries that you can share?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Oh yes. Now we're in a therapy session. Let's
Now we're in the
go.
real conversation. So that again, like this year, like along with the honesty, like boundaries has really been my thing. So I like to put it a recovered people pleaser,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where boundaries just I would start a project and like set the boundaries. But then once we're in the swing of things and just feeling good, and because I don't want to disappoint them, oh yeah, I'll take the call at 10 o'clock at nighttime. Oh, don't worry about it. I know I'm out right now on the weekend, but as soon as I get home, or let me just see what I can do on my phone. They had to stop. Again, another coach was essentially was like, listen, you're running a business. You're running a business. So you have to treat it like a business. You have to operate as a business. And mind you, this is me 12 years in business, you know, and sometimes you just need that reminder. So what I had to do was start setting the boundaries, and boundaries as in with myself first. So if I say I'm going to not look at my phone or not look at my computer after a certain time, not looking at my computer after a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's so hard. I'm so used to picking up my phone, first thing I check some emails. And who do I need to respond to, right? But start there. Then from there, communicating this. So this year I have been traveling without working. I may bring the computer, but I've not opened it up.
I was going to say, and how's that worked for you?
Yeah.
I want to hear.
It has been great.
Yes.
Like, so, but I set everything up well in advance. So I'm telling my clients, so the last trip I did was me and my sister went to Disney World, 2 big kids running around the park. And I knew because of how we were planning like our days, there would be no or early morning work, PM work. No, done that before and it was miserable.
Yeah.
I told my clients, hey, I'm gonna be out of town from these days. I need this by this date.
Yeah.
These are the last cutoff days. I will not respond to you. And when I was going, I did have some clients respond, sending emails, but I said, no, I'm not responding, you
Yeah.
know? And, so yeah, I did check the email. I didn't respond, but, just for that, like it made their work didn't stop, especially for my marketing clients. Their posts still went out, websites were fine,
Yeah.
what they needed to do was great for them and it was all taken care of, but it was taken care of in advance so that I could really take the break, and it was just so pleasant. And it was just so pleasant. And
Yeah.
it's in stark contrast because we did Disney in February also. I worked around the clock.
Mm.
Early morning, PM. Now, mind you, early morning, doing work, walking a park for 10 hours, doing work as soon as I got. Like, literally, I would be getting to the house, I'm on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the thought, I'm like, this is not why I started a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for the longest I did do the traveling and working. I'm like, finally, like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But what do I need to do so that my business does not stop? I have clients so that everybody's supported and I can still enjoy my time and they're not stressed out, So just really, again, comes back to communication, being honest with myself and then being honest with them.
Yeah. And I mean, in hearing your story, I just imagined 3 of my friends that are in that exact Disney scenario of they were still working or they were still answering questions. They're waiting in line and like, oh, I just got to respond back to somebody. Or they think that they're going to, cure cancer or like solve the world's problems from a line at Disney World from their phone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so grateful that you shared your message because again, it's so honest and it's not like this is a universal problem, especially because we all have smartphones. We all have access to work from anywhere and be able to do all these incredible things, but it doesn't mean that we should, 24/7, 365. And I love that you have found how that works for you. And I think that the scariest part of it is doing it the very first time, and holding yourself accountable to like, okay, I put up the boundary, I communicated that it's all there. Now I just have to do it. Now I just have to make sure that I'm not stepping over my own boundary, right? It's not even about other people half the time. It's about us kind of letting ourselves down and saying, no, but this is an emergency. And it's like, no, it's their emergency. It's not my emergency. It's in their mind, it's their emergency. But I did what was requested and I'm taking a step back and honoring my own boundary. And I think that it's scary, but man, when it works and you do it and you're successful and upholding those, you're like, oh, this is how people this is the people that enjoy their lives. Like that's what I have felt. It's like, I've made it. I've made it. Right.
Yeah. And even outside of traveling, it can be as simple as just me on the weekend, me deciding to take the day off.
Yes.
I've had it where I've had a client where we've approved a website, it's good to go. And then Friday, 5:00, oh, hey, we had the wrong text or we had an error here on our part. My computer's closed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will respond. I'm telling myself this. Tell myself, you will respond on Monday.
Yep.
They will be okay.
Yeah.
And then the weekend, they were okay, And I think for me, it was really a case of, again, not wanting to lose the client and not wanting to, not wanting to look bad. But what I found is that your people are your people. And I honestly wouldn't want to work with anybody who couldn't understand boundaries anyway,
Yeah.
because you want to be taking care of yourself too, or even be open to learning like more about that. Like, how can we learn from each other? But, like I said, I've never had it go drastically where it's an explosion. Like, emergencies tend to disappear when you're not paying attention to them. Like,
When the laptop's closed.
yeah.
We need to put that on a shirt. Emergencies go away when my out of office is on. I don't know
Yeah.
what happens.
There was a time in life before computers, like at home computers.
Yeah.
I think about all the time, like 30 years ago, where people would go to work and then you come home
Yeah.
and you didn't have a phone at home.
Oh,
You went to work. I think I had watched a show on Apple. What is it like where the guy, like when you're in the office, you're like a second person. It's a really
is it
crazy show.
Severance?
Severance.
I haven't seen it yet. I was like, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. No
Yeah.
spoilers, but
I
go
won't
ahead.
spoil it. But just that idea of like you have a work life and you have a home life,
Yeah.
like it's separate for a reason. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long ago where that was the norm. You're not going to call somebody, hey, did you see my email last night? No, I don't have a computer at home. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
So internet is great and devices are great, but also the world is much, much smaller. Everybody thinks we're supposed to be connected all the time. And is that healthy? That's the question.
Yeah. And I love how, you talked about, it sounds like you enjoyed your Disney trip so much more the second time when you were able to be present. Cause I'm just imagining, just the whole, you're waking up early, you're having your coffee and you're doing like all the things, you're like answering emails frantically. And then, your sister's like, okay, we got to go. Like the train's leaving, the bus is leaving. And you're like, no, just one more second. And then you're like, oh crap, I didn't eat anything or I didn't pack any snacks. And then you're there. And the whole time you're there, you're worried about your clients. And then you get back and then, just walking period for that long is exhausting. And then being in the heat, then you get back to your hotel and you're like, you're not at your best. I think that's the other piece here is when you're stretched so thin, you can't give your all to your family and friends, and you can't give your all to your clients if you're also like you're just burning the candle at both ends. And that is literally the definition of burning out. Like it's gone. So when I'm thinking about the audience and the people that are listening to this, there's probably a good majority of people that find themselves in that they're butting up against burnout. Like maybe they haven't fully hit it, because if they did, I would imagine they just shut off all the podcasts. They're not even listening to the podcast anymore. They're just like, I got to step away. I got to walk away from everything. But let's assume that there's a good chunk of the audience that are like, yeah, I want to avoid this completely, or I want to know what signs of burnout are, or I want to make sure that if this does happen to me in the future, like what are some tips that you would give to them that could be very practical and not something that's like something they could do today, like right now, as soon as they're done listening to our conversation?
Yeah. Well, the first thing usually if I'm feeling burned out or I feel it coming on, the first thing I do is an audit of my time. And not what do I want to do, but what am I actually doing? How much time am I spending on Instagram? How much time am I spending on work or client work or emails or meetings? And then from there, seeing what needs to shift, right? Because there may be a time where like maybe I'm spending a little bit too much time on Instagram, where that could be sleep time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or it made me realize, I'm not spending enough client work time. So I'm stressed out there because I'm not getting as much work done. But on this space, I have, some extra time here, so there that goes first. And then from there, I'm looking at the audit, looking to see what on my list or my schedule is non-negotiables. Right. So for me, school just started. So my mornings, I'm teaching. I can't do anything. I can't make commitments, which means I have like my afternoons to do work, whether it's teaching yoga or teaching or doing client work, After my classes, then yoga classes that are scheduled are also non-negotiable, right? So then it's like there's steps to this. So after we get understand what we're doing, we see what's on our schedule, and then for the things that can be removed, can they be removed?
Mhm.
So let's say let's say I have, or for example, last week I was telling you that I had the podcast conference that I signed up to do while also being first week of school. I would have liked to go to the conference. I could have fit it in after classes, but also after classes, I had some client work to do.
Yeah.
You know, had I gone to the conference, I would have had to wait until after to do the client work, which then eats into my sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep for me is a priority, you
Mhm.
know, so that I can be well rested. So I would say first, yeah, definitely looking at what you're doing, what can be removed, and then in terms of getting stuff done, I like to time block it, and I like to say I do work blocks or 90-minute sprints where if I can get one done, and I'm talking about a work block in that everything is on do not disturb. Here's a list of, like maybe the top three, knowing I may only get through the one. 90 minutes, head down, get the work done. Then when I come up, it's like, oh, I've gotten it done. I feel
Yeah.
good for the day. If I can get another 90-minute sprint in, that's great. But if not, I won the day.
Yeah.
I won the day. Give yourself that check. And so I find that when I do it like that, I get more done in a week than if I were just trying to get everything done,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. And I love that you said, so time blocking, I love. I love to time block. I feel like that's the only reason why I get anything done is because I literally like go and write out, like, no, this is when I'm going to do these things. And, it's the only way that I've found time to work out is like, no, it's just blocked in my calendar. It's like no one could do anything during like, family, like nobody. It's like, that's just for
Yeah.
me to do 30 minutes. And that's all I need is I just need 30 minutes. I don't need 5 hours. I just need 30 minutes for myself to work out. And then I love the 90-minute, blocks of just like nothing, like no distractions, no checking emails, like nothing that's going to keep me from getting this one thing done. So if you add in, yoga or another type of workout for 30 minutes and a 90-minute block, that's just 2 hours of a 24-hour day. And I think that when you think about it that way, doesn't that sound more doable? Like, I hope everyone's nodding right now. That's like, yes, like we can actually do that. Like from these tips that you're sharing today, it just doesn't feel so overwhelming. Because when I think about trying to do all the possible things that I could do, I immediately, my brain shuts down. Like,
Yeah.
that's too overwhelming. I can't do that. It's way too much. It's way too
Yeah.
much.
And then I would also say too, the other tip is that when figuring out what to do in a 90-minute sprint, so when we usually create our to-do lists, what I used to do, like when I had client stuff, I literally just put the client's name, right? This person, this person, this person, or even like clean up or whatever. That doesn't actually tell me what I'm doing. It just says their name. So people call them different things. I call it the next actionable item, right? So if I have like a client, say Ashley. Ashley on my list, what am I working on with Ashley? I'm working on a website. Okay. Is that the project? That's a project. So do I need to, let's say I'm building a web page for her. Okay, that's an action item. Can I just go build a page? Well, no, actually I need to confirm I have the text, the right
Mm.
content, right? So then is that the next action item to make sure I have the content? Well, actually, it's me contacting Ashley to get the content from her. So sometimes it's like really breaking it down to the weeds
Yes.
of what do you need to do? Like, what's the steps? And just kind of go through the list, so that when you have on your list saying, I need to contact Ashley about the contacts for the website, is a little bit different just saying Ashley. So it makes it, and that's why I like make that focus period so much easier when that list is written down in specifics.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I love, call it agile, call it, all the
Mhm.
different like, project management terms that you want. But I love the brain dumping of like, okay, like you said, it's like, I got to create a page. Okay. But what does that look like? Do you need visuals? Do you need the copy? Do you need like, who needs to sign off on this? So I love it when, I mean, I'm a list girl. Like, let's just be really honest. I'm a
Right.
list girl. Give me a fun, like, let's make it colorful. Let's make it fancy. Like, I mean, I don't care. It could be literally on a Post-it note, but anytime you give me a list, I am that satisfaction of checking it off.
Yeah.
I get a dopamine hit every single time. So that's what's even more fun about having like subcategories or sub
Mhm.
items on one thing. Cause I'm like, ooh, I get to check off multiple things. Like, okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just totally nerded out on everybody. But you've said multiple times, your clients and people that you work with. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do for your clients? Like tell us more about your business and specifically like if you have some examples on some previous clients that you've helped and what that could look like for that someone's that's listening and they're like, I want to work more with Sydney and like, what could that look like?
Yeah, so like I said, my main client base is around the brand strategy. And so really what I focus on really finding clarity, right? So again, like adding that space for them to be able to better connect with their audiences. And so it's understanding, do we have the brand visuals that we need
Mm,
to then, because sometimes we'll come in like, okay, I want to build a website. And so a lot of people come to me for websites and to either audit their websites or to redo their websites, or just brand new websites. But it's like, okay, we want a website, but what's the actual brand that we're trying, like what's the message we're trying to get? Because you can have a website that does not convert or does not, or
yeah.
rather that someone goes to, it's like, okay, I don't understand what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Right. And so I help people really find clarity in their messaging. And so I just finished one, a opera house actually last week. And they their site was very old. It's very outdated, which is fine. I don't I at the end of the day, someone made the effort to put it out there, and it worked for a little bit. But I took it to the 21st century, which we like to say. And so they wanted it to be more modern, right? While still using like their logo. Um and everything else was kind of up to me. So first what I had to do, like before we even got to the website, was really get clear about the message that they're trying to present and who they're trying to present to. Right, because presenting to children is very different than coming to an audience who's looking for, children who like music versus an audience who like, oh, we are philanthropists who want to support the arts, right?
Yeah.
So we went through a few processes to understand the audience, like doing research, and then took that into like a direction of like, how do we really want this to look? Like even a little bit more than like a mood board, but really like being able to talk about the site and talk about the company itself, and that transitions to the site, you know
Oh,
and so they were very pleased. Very pleased, and they're launching their new show, like their new season, in a couple months, so it's like right on time for them, so I love it. I think that for me, the name of my company is Creative Obsessions, and aptly titled because like I think the idea of creative things, right? Like even like websites or branding or whatnot, it's just someone had to think about them, but then also how do we connect it to the audience,
yeah.
right? I tell my students that in design, there's art and there's design. And they're very interchangeable, yes, but design serves purpose.
Hmm.
So it's different to create a brand that looks pretty, a website that looks pretty. But if you're not creating something where people are moved to action, we have really nice art. And that's
Yeah.
fine. That's what you want. But if you were spending money to create a site, like we want them to be able to do something. But that goes into clarity, right? The clarity is strategy of then having how do we market this. So it's a roundabout way of saying I create websites and I create brands and I help people find clarity. Like it just brings me joy.
Oh, I mean, and I can tell, like, this is what's so fun about like finding people, it's like when people meet me, they're just like, oh my gosh, like you're really obsessed with podcasts. I'm like, yes. And I love to talk to people that are obsessed with, at the root of it, I'm obsessed with marketing. And I can tell you are too, it's like really making that connection between who a customer is and who the client is, or whoever's trying to serve the people that are in the audience. And I just love that, you get so giddy talking about it because I can see your passion and I love it. And I mean, to round this whole conversation out, this is why I thought it was so important for you to come on and share about burnout today, because it bums me out so much whenever I find that someone has burned out because they got overwhelmed with their content or what they're doing, because they have a passion. They have a really important message to share. And at the end of the day, that's my mission, is to help more people share their message to the specific audience that they're trying to reach. So thank you so much for sharing all about your journey. And can we link to that website that you recently redone? Or would we be able to? Okay, we'll link to that in the show notes, because I think that would be fun to see some of your work in action. But before we get to like the end of this conversation, I have a few rapid fire questions that I wanted to ask you. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So the first one is, what piece of advice would you give to a brand new podcaster or content creator?
I would say that you are right where you need to be. Like, yes, it's nice to get inspiration from others, but also the internet is not a real place, and it's really easy to to see, oh, they're doing this, I'm behind. No. If you're getting started, like, start. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. Like, your people will find you, and you have to believe that, right? Like, your people will find you, you'll have your space. There's more than enough space for you to do what you want to do.
I love that. Oh, that's such good advice. Okay, my next one is a 2-part question. So, what is a dream podcast you would love to be on, and who is your dream podcast guest you would love to interview?
Oh, I think a dream podcast I would love to be on would be... Oh my God, that's so hard. So many of them. Okay, I think a dream podcast would be... I would like to okay, so there's a comedy podcast.
Let's go. Like, you got to share it. We got to hear this now.
Okay, so it's here's the thing, and it's these 2 comedians, but one comedian come on stage. He has built a empire, right, around his children, around his family, and he does all the things, and it's been so fascinating to watch. Right? Because he's like the person of busy, but still manages, I'm like, this is amazing, how to do the things, but still take care of yourself and take care of your family, and so like burnout, like what? So I think that would be a nice one to be on, like a lighter one.
That's fun. And then who would you love to interview as a host of a show and you're interviewing a guest?
Well, I mean, I think if we're reaching for the stars, then I'm going for the stars. I want Kamala Harris.
Right? Awesome.
Right? Someone who's literally doing it all. And I think it would be so cool or interesting to interview her to see like how she manages everything. Yeah. And what that looks like, what her journey has been, and really like kind of get the nitty gritty of like, what's the journey been? Yeah. But also just how she manages to be vice president while trying to run for another campaign, while, supporting her family and being a woman and like all these other things. Like, I just, I just find it fascinating when people are just do the things they love, and okay with all the things. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make you nervous or anything, but there have been a few that have called it on this podcast and it's happened. So I'm just saying, like, we put it out into the universe. Like, we put it out there, right? Our job is done to put it out there. Okay. My last question is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
I was told this last night, I'm a reformed perfectionist. That's what I'm claiming. We talk about it in therapy, it's a different conversation, but I a lot of what I've done has been because of perfectionism, and so I'm claiming that I'm reformed and that I'm working through it. I've worked through it. I really try and embrace the be have do or be do have, right? Who do I want to be? I want to be somebody who is no longer a perfectionist, and I try and operate in that space so that I can then walk into perfectionism is nothing that I struggle with. So
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I love that. Oh, this has been just such a fun conversation. And I already know that we're going to get some DMs and some fan mail like flurries on like, okay, like this episode was so good. So Sydney, I really appreciate everything that you shared today. This was such a beautiful conversation. So where can everybody find more about you and all the fun things that you're up to?
yeah, so you can find it at my website. It's just my name, SydneaLewis.com. I'm also on Instagram. I'm Sydnea, SYDNEA _Deborah, DEBORIAH. I talk about burnout there. I talk about, like I said, what I'm doing. Usually in my stories, I will start posting again to my main page, but usually like those between the website and that Instagram page is kind of the hub of where I kind of hang out.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to link to everything in the show notes.
Okay.
So again, thank you so much for hanging out with us
Thank
today.
you.
This was so fun.
Thank you.